So years ago, I had learned about ayahuasca when I was watching a YouTube video. And at that time, I was in the middle of horrible alcoholism. And the guy that gave the interview, he was talking about how he had done ayahuasca and it completely cured his alcoholism. So for me, I was like, whoa, that's really cool. But I was definitely not in a state where I felt comfortable going down into the jungle and doing a drug. So, years passed and I finally came to the point where if you read my book, you can see where I went through the process of becoming sober, and now I'm 6 years sober. But back when I became sober about 6 years ago, I went cold turkey and developed a plan in a way in which I was able to become sober. But as time progressed, I started to work on my healing and I started dipping into psychedelics. And I did DMT one time and it was a really harsh experience, and it was a really great wake-up call for me because it really showed me like I had a lot of work to do. And that then in turn led to doing a large dose of mushrooms, which really revealed a lot to me about where I was at and the work that needed to be done. And after that mushroom experience, that was about a year and a half ago, I really started thinking about ayahuasca seriously. And it kept coming up and I kept sidestepping it or kind of avoiding it. And I mean, the medicine just kept calling to me. And so I eventually booked it to go down to Costa Rica. And what I really liked about the place that I found, Behold Retreats, they only allow 8 people at a time. And I had found other resorts, and there's some that do 50, 60 people at a time. And I think that can be good and have its own benefits. But for me, in the state that I was in, I really wanted a more intimate environment. And so I chose that spot. So right as after I booked the trip, I had a pretty, high stress sales job. And literally the day after I booked the trip, I got laid off. And it was completely unexpected. And the company had layoffs. And so they were going through layoffs. And unfortunately, I was a part of that. But the cool thing about it was I actually got the opportunity to say, all right, well, I can actually separate from everything. And I can go down, do this, not worrying about external things, right? And so I think that was a really great thing that happened, to be completely honest with you. It couldn't have been more perfect. So I go down to Costa Rica. You arrive on Sunday, you kind of hang out, and then you do your first ceremony Monday night. And they go from 7 at night to 1 in the morning is the first ceremony. The environment is great because you're kind of in the middle of the jungle. The facility is top notch, 5-star, super nice. They have a vegan chef, and really everyone there, all the staff, they've all done it. And so it's a very safe environment. So really I was going down there ultimately because I had done all this work on myself and I felt like there was a wall. There was something that was kind of in my way from like moving to that next step of growth. And I really honestly couldn't get to it. I could not understand what was causing all these issues. And so I felt like, hey, maybe ayahuasca can be the thing that can help me. So the first night they do it in a maloca, which is like, it has a roof, no walls. And so you're kind of in the jungle and you're kind of looking out into the jungle, and you kind of walk down and you see the shaman for the first time. And one thing that was really cool is it's very ceremonial. And for me, having a really terrible experience with a religious cult, growing up in a religious cult, I'm very against that kind of stuff. Like it brings up a lot of triggers for me. And going into this experience, I was kind of open-minded, and I can't tell you how much I respect the ceremony in which they went through. And it was so cool. And I have a lot of respect for it. It's very powerful. And that shaman is dedicating his life to really helping heal people. And so that's the experience that I got from it. But you come down and you have that first experience, and you choose a mat to sit on, and then he blesses the medicine and then opens it up, and everybody comes up and takes a cup, and then you sit in silence for about an hour. And after about an hour, he opens it up for a second cup, and really you have the opportunity to measure or meter how much you're going to take. And so you really ask yourself, hey, do I think I need more? Am I good? And then you take a second cup. So I took a second cup, and really the first night for me, I will say, was very chaotic and very confusing. It's not like anything that I thought it would be. And again, I've had experiences with other types of medicine like mushrooms and things. It was very different than anything I've ever done and extremely confusing. I had some really cool moments where I was able to see some people from my past and understand like where I was maybe being hung up on certain feelings towards those people, and almost able to resolve it. And it's very hard to explain, exactly how that happens, but I was able to resolve some issues that I had with some people from my past and really kind of let go of things that, and I'll be honest with you, one person was someone that I have not seen in 10 or 12 years. And I was able to resolve some issues that I had with that person and really walk away from that experience with a better understanding of how that relationship ended and where we were and how I can really move forward, not holding on to that. Now, one thing I will say is that, with ayahuasca, there's a lot of talk about purging, right? And throwing up and things like that. And the first night I dry heaved a lot and I was just struggling, absolutely struggling. It was a physical struggle as well as a heavy mental struggle. And I was dry heaving and I just was holding on. I was really holding on. I think from this point of view now, that perspective, I was really holding on to a lot of stuff that was causing me issues. By the end of the first night, I was confused. I was just confused. I left that first night just thinking to myself like, wow, I don't even really need to do this anymore. It didn't really give me what I was hoping for. And so I was a little bit let down. The cool thing about going down to Costa Rica and being separated from everyone and being in that environment is if you did want to give up, well, you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and you're there and, you might as well go for a second round versus maybe if you're doing it here in the US, you could easily just be like, I'm going home. And I'm so glad I didn't because I went a lot more internal on the second night. So the same thing, you go down and you take the medicine and, you sit in silence. And the second night I was like, I'm just going to go inside. I'm going to stay on this mat and I'm just going to go inside. And the thing about the ceremony is that the shaman plays beautiful music and he sings and the music is guiding you through this process. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible how the music can know kind of where you're at and kind of start to push you in directions or maybe bring something up that's not comfortable and then, kind of go back the other direction. And so the music was absolutely amazing. And the second night I took 3 cups again. And what's interesting is I was dry heaving for whatever reason. I just could not purge. And by the end of the second night, I was honestly very, very, very defeated. I went up to the shaman afterwards and I said, man, I don't know what it is, but I don't feel like I can break through. And he said, hey, listen, he says, what we're going to do is, because we went Monday night and Tuesday night in a row. And so he said, hey, Thursday night, he's like, Wednesday night, we're going to take off. We're not going to do it Wednesday night. And then Thursday night, we're going to start at 9:00 at night and we're going to go till sunrise. He's like, I'm also going to bring a stronger brew. So you'll have more time and you'll have a more powerful brew in order to kind of get to where you want to get. After the second night, I was like more motivated, but it was a long couple of days waiting because you have, all day Wednesday and then Thursday, you really have to wait until 9:00 at night, but tons of time to reflect, tons of time to spend time with others and talk to others that are also going through that experience. So the third night we go into it and I go into it this time with no expectation whatsoever. Like I have dropped everything and I'm like, I am not going to try to control anything. I am not going to try to expect anything. I'm going to take the medicine and I'm going to lay down and meditate and go as deep into my level of no thought that I can. So we go down and we take the medicine and even the first drink, I could tell, I was like, yes, this is much stronger. I was definitely feeling it a lot quicker. And after an hour, he opened it up for a second cup and I absolutely got up and got a second cup. About 20-30 minutes into the second cup, I could feel it very strong. It was extremely strong and I was gone. Like I was gone. I was tripping so hard. And again, just really feeling the medicine, I wasn't really getting anywhere necessarily from a healing perspective. Well, not from my perspective. The medicine was definitely working on me. And I'm listening to the music and I'm just trying to relax as much as possible. And he opens it up again for a third cup. And I had to crawl over to him and to take the third cup because I was so far gone. But I was like, I'm not going to waste this opportunity to get as deep as I possibly can. So I get back to my mat and I lay down and about 10 or 15 minutes in, I just get hit so hard. Really at that point, like I think when you're so deep in it, it's really difficult to control any thoughts that you have whatsoever. And so for me, I had this massive overwhelming feeling of my father. And for those of you who don't know, he died when I was 22 in 2005 and he was 53 and he had cancer and he died rather quickly. It only took him about a year from the time he got diagnosed to the time he died. Very, very traumatic for our family. Extremely, extremely difficult loss. That was one of the harder things that I've gone through in my life for sure, was losing him. To be honest with you, I did not have a great working relationship with him when he died. And so that's something that I've kind of always held on to. So when I have this third drink, my dad comes to my mind and the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm like, I just wanted his approval. Like that's all I wanted from him, is I just wanted his approval. And again, if you guys haven't read the book, I have 10 siblings, and I have a huge family and my dad had a lot of kids. And again, the medicine kind of said to me, it's like, look, he was doing the absolute best that he could. And he was doing the best that he could based on what he was given as a child and what he had developed into as a man. And I still was kind of like, I know he was, but I just wanted him to approve, like give me approval of what I was doing. And then the medicine says to me, you mean like your son wants from you? And I was just like, oh my gosh, like it hit me so hard. It was like, wow, like what my dad was taught from his dad was passed down to me and passed down to my son. And it's just this never ending thing. And it's like, it gave me this understanding of like, you have the opportunity now that you have this realization that you can give your son maybe what you didn't want, maybe what you didn't have, right? Like the things that you did not get from your dad, you're now conscious enough to say, I can give that to my son. And when that happened, I kind of like had this overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's not even my dad's fault. Like whose fault is it? It's no one's fault. Like he was literally doing the best he could. And I had this like massive amount of outpouring of love for my dad, which was just absolutely amazing. And it felt so wonderful. And I had this massive amount of additional love pouring out to my son. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like we're so connected and we owe it to each other to do the very best that we can. And then my older brother comes to mind. And him and I had a very tumultuous upbringing. And if you read my book, you can kind of understand that a little bit more, but it was very tumultuous, very challenging. And he had a lot of challenges. You know, he spent a good fair amount of his time and life in prison and really cleaned his life up after that, but struggled really bad when he was younger. When the thought of him comes up, I think to myself like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into this. I don't want to think about this. And then this idea comes to me and it's like, what happened to him? And I was like, yeah, what did happen to him? Like, why was he behaving the way that he was? And right when I asked that question, it shows me my mom. And it's like her at 25 and her at 20 and her at 15 and then 10 and then 5. And what was interesting about my mom is my mom had a really, really, really tough childhood. So her father died when she was 2 years old in a motorcycle accident. And her mother remarried, and that man ultimately molested her and her sister up until they were 18 and could leave. And so it showed me that my mom had no basis for like what even a good mom or father or a family was like. She had no understanding of what that was. And so when she had my oldest brother, she literally didn't know how to be a parent. And if you read my book, again, my dad brought my mom, met my mom and brought my mom into polygamy. Crazy story, right? That's another story. But my mom was like basically had imposter syndrome on how to be a mother. And then she proceeded to have 8 more children. My mother gave birth to 9 children. And she had no idea what she was doing. And so that automatically transferred to my brother. And my brother didn't feel that love from his mother like, you know, most children desire to. And so that affected him really heavily. And so then the medicine said to me, it's like, what do you want from any of these people? How do you expect them to behave? And I was just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, none of us know what we're doing. None of us know what we're doing. We're all struggling, right? And so then I just had this massive outpouring for them. And then all of a sudden it just hits me like a bolt of lightning and it goes back 6 generations. And it just shows me the shit just rolling downhill from generation to generation. It's showing me everything, all these things and problems and issues that we have, they just keep getting passed down to generation to generation. And it was like, Thomas, you right now, everything you've been through, it was like all the bad things that had happened, they all connected and it was perfect. And it was like everything that you have been through, all the struggles, all of this stuff, it's led to this moment where you now realize that you can stop it all. You have gone through all this transformational change and all these things, and you're now at a place where you can go and make a difference and stop it. You can be there for your son. You can be there for your family. You can stop this generational tough stuff that's been happening. And as it's all happening, I'm thinking of my ancestors and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, what did they go through? And it like shows me that they were like very, very, very rough and tough cowboy men. And they actually migrated from Germany into the US in the 1700s and then migrated across the United States when it was not settled. They weren't murderers, but they had to protect their family. And yes, there was death and destruction and horrible things that happened. And those men were so hardened. And that hardness has like passed its way down in the generations. And so me and my brothers, I have 5 brothers, we have this like underlying anger and like feeling of like needing to like prove ourselves to people. And it's like, that has all been passed to us. And it made me realize that like everything that we have in our lives, it's not specifically about, you know, what I in my life have experienced, but these things have generationally been passed down to us. And it was like, you have all this power now that you have this knowledge to use the story, because that story is so valuable. It's so valuable in the sense that it can be told to other people and shown like, hey, look, I was an alcoholic. I went through divorce. I went through death. I went through all of these things, and I have overcome it, and I have transcended or overcome some of these generational things that have been passed down, and so can you. And so I was just absolutely overwhelmed. And then right at that moment, I just feel this like pain in my gut, and I bend over, you got the bucket in front of you, and I bend over and I just like start spewing black. It's just pouring out of my face. Like it's coming out of my nose, it's coming out of everywhere. I can feel it coming out of my face, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it's so violent, like that your eyes feel like they're gonna pop out of their head. And it went on for 35, 45 seconds, and I was like, I couldn't even hardly breathe. And finally it all comes out, and I like put my head down and my eyes are closed, and I'm like grabbing some tissue, and I'm like wiping my face off and wiping everything off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's gonna be vomit everywhere. And I open my eyes and I look at the bucket, and there's nothing. I've tripped the whole entire purge. And it was so freaking real. And I was just letting go of all that generational stuff that had been building up in me and everything else. And it was just absolutely incredible. And then at that moment, once I got all of that out, I had this amazing feeling of euphoria come over me. And it showed me, you are not this body. You are this eternal, magnificent soul, and everything is perfect in existence. And you're perfect. And your friends are perfect, and your family's perfect, and everyone in this world is perfect. But we all need to remember that. We come here and we have forgotten it, and we all need to remember it. And so it's you need to use your story, Thomas, to go forward and tell as many people as you can about this experience. And hopefully it inspires them to go down that path to help heal themselves and heal their generational traumas and all those things that have been happening. So at this moment, I'm just in euphoria, and my mind is I'm just oh my gosh, it's been right in front of me this whole time. And I just feel this feeling of massive self-love, just this incredible self-love. And I look at the shaman, and I have this look in my eyes oh my gosh. I look at him, and he looks right at me, and he just nods. And he just gives me this nod of approval, he's known this the whole time. And me begging for a breakthrough, he's you're gonna get it. You're going to see what I see and what everyone else sees, that we're all these amazing beings that literally have limitless possibilities. And all the ideas of everything I had read about manifestation, all this stuff, I'm it's real. You are powerful enough. If you believe and you find out who you truly are and you truly love yourself, you can manifest literally anything you want. So needless to say, I had a breakthrough is an understatement. And many more things happened in this experience, but that was the crux of it. And so now what I'm doing is I've come back. And again, if you recall, I had lost my job beforehand. I've now come back, and I'm now on this journey to how do I help as many people as possible, whether it be speaking or putting out videos or creating courses to help people through how to discover who they are and go through this step-by-step process. Because the thing is, if you're just starting on this journey, you can't go and do ayahuasca and just expect it to be a silver bullet and solve all these problems. The medicine is going to meet you where you're at. So if you are struggling, it's in your best interest to do as much pre-work as you possibly can, so that when you do the medicine, you get the most out of it. But again, everybody's story is different, everybody's past is different, and I'm really here to just say, how can I inspire others and help others as much as possible to really go and discover that true identity that's in you, that true internal soul that is just waiting to be remembered, so that they can come out and shine and absolutely light up the world.